Nick Baldwin for BloodyElbow.com here with a UFC middleweight fighter who will be making his promotional debut this weekend, this Saturday at UFC on Fox 26 at the Bell MTS Place here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. It is Julian Marquez. He is taking on Darren Stewart. Julian, thank you very much for the time. You're in Winnipeg. I gotta, before anything, I gotta ask you. You're from Kansas. This must be pretty eye-opening as far as the temperatures, and it's not even. Let me tell you, for winter in Winnipeg, this isn't even that cold.
Uh, yeah, it's not that cold, but I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. We're big difference. We don't like Kansas, but it's typically when I like growing up there, it would get super cold in that area. I've seen as low as -2 Fahrenheit. So out here when it's 22 to 30 degrees, it's Fahrenheit. It's really not that. It's not that cold as long as you bundle up.
You have your furnace blasting in your hotel room, which we're in right now. At least you stay indoors, get the furnace blasting. It's all good. You're back in Kansas City.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, we don't know how to work any of this stuff here. Everything's in Celsius, so we didn't really realize that 29 degrees is super, super hot.
It's a pain having to convert.
Yeah, it's we should probably Google it next time.
Wouldn't be a terrible idea. Let's talk about you being on Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series over the summer. You were on, I want to say the third show, is that right? Or fourth one.
Yeah.
You took on Phil Hawes in that card's main event, getting the knockout win. One of the best knockouts of the year. You, of course, landed the right kick as he was, he was hurt. He was on the way up, and you landed it. You timed it perfectly. What was that like? Having, it was over the summer, but it's still one of the best knockouts, if not the best of 2017. And then just getting the contract, your reaction. I watched the fight back earlier, and I noticed you sort of just sat in the cage for a few minutes on your knees, sort of soaking it all in. What was going through your head at that time?
I was actually at that time. I didn't think of anything. I just sat there on my knees because Phil was out. Like after I landed a kick and Herb stepped in. I thought something illegal happened. I didn't even know what happened. So like I turned around and walked, and I looked back and I saw Phil was laying on the ground, and I was like, oh man. So I got on my knees and made sure I didn't need to celebrate, do anything. So I sat there and waited until he was okay. Like that's all my focus was. Once he got up and everything was okay, then it was like, all right, now we can smile. Now we can keep going with our day and go from there.
And, where did that rank as far as the best days of your life? You got the contract, got a knockout win, one of the best of the year. Is that right up there?
Yeah, it's up there for competition wise. Like, that's exactly how you want your first viewing of Dana White to go. That's what everyone would want, and that's what you need. But to be honest, like I went in there with, this is another fight. It doesn't matter who's in front of me. It doesn't matter who's watching. It's the same old deal, and it was interesting.
Did you know when you landed that kick and got the knockout and he was out cold? Did you know at that time that you were definitely walking home a UFC fighter?
Actually, no. If you watched that episode, the fourth episode, everyone was an exciting fight. I mean, there was a knockout before mine. There was a couple very, very close decisions, straight epic battles. So when I got the knockout, it was another knockout. Another big guy knocked someone out. I didn't think anything of it, and I guess it didn't really register at the time.
You had a little bit of a tough weight cut for that fight against Phil Hawes. Maybe a little bit tough is an underestimate, just judging by your reaction. Is going down to 185 typically a tough cut, or was it tougher than usual on that day?
That day it was tough. So I normally fight 205. That's really where I was at, and I went down 85 one time before. This one I fought 205 and fought Cameron Olson in May. And we got the call a couple weeks after, so I only had I had like 6 weeks to get down. I was up at 230, so I contacted Tyler Minton, and he's my nutritionist, and he helped get everything down to a T. He knows everything. He knows my body. I've worked with him for years, so we got down as low as we could go, and the rest of it was it was up to me. Essentially, that weight cut was bad because I didn't sleep. For 24 hours, I was up the whole entire time. We were up at the Palms, and there's a basketball court in there, and people were playing basketball, and I was waking up, trying to sleep, and people were making loud noise through there. And, when you're cut and your body's down at a weight that it hasn't been in a really, really long time, it's hard to rest. And I was up the whole time. So luckily I had my buddy Sean, he sat there and helped me out to make the last, couple pounds to, take off. And when we made it, it was just right then and there, I knew I already won because I made that weight cut.
Do you think you'll always be at 185, or do you think you have more of a permanent future in in a few years at 205?
No, I'll be permanently at 185. See, that one was like such a short notice, and I didn't really change my lifestyle to compete. I just was like, all right, we're going to go 185. This is where I want to be. And right now, like, since we found out about this fight, and since I've been in there, I've been working with Tyler Minton, and we have been doing everything correctly and changing my life for the past 13 weeks. And my weight, like, right now, I'm perfect on my weight. Like, I am 15 pounds lighter than I was the day before I weighed in.
Wow.
So right now I'm 15 pounds lighter, and it's 4 days away.
Yeah.
So like, I feel amazing because it's like, regardless, I've already been through the worst of cutting. It's not going to be that hard.
You told me off air earlier that you did most of your camp at the UFC Performance Institute in Las Vegas. I guess that would have been your first time there because it's still pretty new, opened in May. And how did that go? And also, working with Minton as well, but did working at the PI help your cut as well?
Yeah. Oh man, it was amazing. Sometimes like Tyler would be busy because he worked with DC, he's worked with Max Holloway. So I'll be able to talk to Clint and Andy. They're both nutritionists there. So I'll be able to pick their brains and understand a little bit more about, the nutrition side, the macros and micros. And we've had some interesting conversations so I can understand a little bit more about my body. As well as Bo Sandoval and Kyle Lamar. They're the strength and conditioning coaches there. And they've been working with me, 3 times a week for the past 13 weeks to help me build up my stamina, build up my strength, build up my speed. And I've seen drastic improvements since I first went there. And if I ever got injured, I would work with Bobby and Heather. I'd go in there to the rehabilitation center and get worked on. And the best part of the PI was working with all these people, becoming friends with all these people. They're kind of like an extended family, and they would help me out on my nutrition to where when I'd I could call up there, I could send them a text message and like, hey, this is the exact amount of chicken I need. This is the exact amount of avocado, rice, beans, whatever. And they would weigh out everything of mine. So when I go there to eat, I would have perfectly proportioned, meals. So it never was a struggle. They made it super easy. And honestly, this is why I have the best camp ever, because they assisted me the whole way.
You're taking on Darren Stewart this weekend at UFC on Fox 26. He's, of course, stepping up on short notice for Vitor Miranda, who pulled out just a couple weeks ago. How does the change in opponent affect you, your camp, having to sort of all of a sudden scratch what, the game plan for Miranda and starting to game plan for a guy like Darren Stewart? Did that affect you, the camp? Was that a little tough?
Not really. Well, let me go back. It was more tough on the fact that, in 2014 to 2015, I spent, an entire year of having opponents back out. So 9 times were my opponents backed out, even right before Christmas. So I couldn't really afford Christmas gifts at the time. And the thing that got me the most was whenever Vitor backed out was, are we going to get an opponent? Yeah, I know it's the UFC. I know all that stuff, but it's still, you never know. And that was the most struggle than anything. But once, we got an opponent, everything's okay, because I don't train specifically for one person. What I do is I train to better myself and how to better myself in certain situations. Like, what did I need to work on my last fight? What do I need to progress myself, And I feel like in order to be successful, you have to better yourself. If you fight for one person, then you're only going to be as good or a little better than that one person. But if you try to compete against yourself and try to get better than against yourself, you have a never-ending, level that you can keep going, just leveling up your character.
Stewart has had a bit of a strange UFC career. He debuted against Francis Barbosa, got a knockout, but that was afterwards changed to a no contest. They rematched because it was an illegal shot. I think he had I can't remember exactly. And then Barbosa actually decisioned him in the second one. And then he's coming off that loss to Carl Robertson. Stylistically, how do you sort of match up against Stewart, do you think?
I feel like we're both going to go out there and we're both going to bang out. We're going to go there, and this is mixed martial arts. So at any point in time, he could go for a shot. At any point in time, I can go for a shot. We're ready for everything. Stylistically, we both have similar, we have close to the same amount of number of fights professionally. Amateur, I could have more, he could have more. So I think it's a great matchup. It's a great debut. Honestly, I believe that fighting Vitor Miranda was a more deadlier opponent and more, I guess, I would say more well-rounded opponent and more of a, he's more of a Muay Thai guy. He's had a lot of experience. He had a lot of K1 fights, and that was a really exciting matchup. So not to take anything away from Darren Stewart, he's a professional. He's a great competitor, but it's my time.
You're, of course, middleweight, and from being in the middleweight division, what are your thoughts on what has happened recently at the top? Of course, Georges St-Pierre just the other day vacated the title. He's likely probably headed back to 170, and Robert Whittaker, the interim champion at the time, is now the undisputed champion. He'll be fighting Luke Rockhold in his first title defense. Are you glad to see that it's sort of been cleared up after a year and a half of sort of it's been pretty cloudy at the top of the middleweight division with Michael Bisping, the champion, fighting Dan Henderson and fights like that? Are you happy to see that it's, in a way, returned back to normal?
I don't really care. Honestly, whoever has the gold is what we're going after. That's why we're in this sport, Robert Whittaker, we all knew he was a champ at the beginning, I love Bisping and I have mad respect for him, but, he went against Dan Henderson, which by all means he should. If I had the opportunity like that, I would. And for him to fight GSP, by all means, I would. But to be honest, those aren't real considered to me. They aren't real title fights because the number one contender is Robert Whittaker. And in that sense, Robert Whittaker won the interim belt, but now he has the championship belt. So this fight with the Rockhold is actually, I think, is his first championship belt because he's actually fighting, for the real belt and not the interim. And don't get me wrong, he beat Yoel Romero. And Yoel is, that dude, he's an animal. So that could have been right there the actual championship if you look at it because, Bisping still won't fight, Romero. And if he wants to, I would love to see that fight. So
how nice is it that the Stewart fight is just a week and a bit, before Christmas and holidays? Just because I know, for fighters on the December 30th card, you sort of have to sacrifice Christmas, a good time to spend time with your family and eat a lot of food. How nice is it that your fight is just right before it?
Man, it's amazing. I feel like every year I've had a fight around Christmas time, so I'm very accustomed to it. Even going back to when I was a kid wrestling, we've always had tournaments. So this is probably the first Christmas where I could sit back and just say, and relax. And finally, I can enjoy a little bit more food than normal. I'll be back home, so I get to have my grandma's cooking. Get some rice and beans, and the family's going to be there. And it would be great to go back to Kansas City with, the victory. That way, everyone's going to be there. They're going to be cheerful. And, I'm stoked, I'm stoked. This is just a dream, It's amazing that be in this situation, be able to sit here and talk to you and to talk about a fight that's about to happen in a few days. It's almost surreal.
Julian, thank you very much for the time. Good luck against Darren Stewart, and best of luck to you on Saturday.